Okay, you guys ready? Okay.
Who here has it on their bucket list to be in the Guinness World Records book? Now raise your hand if you want to be known as the world's most prolific serial killer in the Guinness World Record book. Didn't think so. It just doesn't have the same ring to it as, say, being the first person to drive a flying car. But for one psychotic woman, kidnapping, torturing, and murdering young maiden girls was her cup of tea. Countess Elizabeth Bathory, who miraculously was able to make it to the GCU Grammys tonight, is being acknowledged and awarded with the Worst Villains Award because of her insane and inhumane practices during the 15th century. First, I want to talk to you about Elizabeth Bathory's accomplishments. Next, I want to talk to you about how her accomplishments have impacted those around her. And finally, I want to conclude by putting the Worst Villains Award into perspective and justifying that Elizabeth Bathory deserves this ridiculous honor. To begin, let's give credit to Elizabeth Bathory's accomplishments throughout her life. Being born in 14th century Hungary, Elizabeth Bathory grew up in the town of Transylvania to a distinguished family with many luminaries. That being said, Elizabeth Bathory's family also included many people who would be considered in today's society as extremely disturbed. Having an uncle who was a practicing sadist, having an aunt who was a practicing sadomasochist, Elizabeth Bathory went far beyond the insane practices of her fellow kin. According to History.com, Elizabeth Bathory was infamous in her area for torturing and murdering young maiden girls. Tortures included, but weren't limited to, jamming pins and needles into their fingernails, and also spreading them with honey and letting them be attacked by ants and bees. What great ways to torture your victims, don't you think? I mean, that just takes neurotic to a whole new level. Moreover, her husband, Count Natalie, wanted to keep her satisfied and happy, and so he built her her own torture chamber. What a great gift to give your psychotic wife. Now she has a secret room where she can be creative with her torture methods. With her new and improved torture chamber, Elizabeth Bathory created cages that were covered in needles, which she would stick young girls in and then hang them from the ceiling. And some historians go as far to say that she would stand underneath these cages and bathe in the dripping blood of these girls because she thought it was a magical way to preserve her youth. And that she did. But when her body count exceeded over 600 victims, she started to gain some attention, and she was sentenced to a life of confinement. I guess her looks weren't very important after that point, considering the only person who would be seeing her face was herself. So now that you know about the inspiring life of Elizabeth Bathory, let's now look at her legacy and impact. Bathory has left humanity wondering whether or not any villain can even come close to her insane and inhumane practices when it came to her victims. She's impacted the world in more ways than you may think. According to the book Infamous Woman, Bathory was reputed to be a vampire, a witch, and a lesbian. And she has also inspired the Brothers Grimm, Bram Stoker, and Gothic horror fans around the world. This just goes to show how the world we live in today still has crazy people who are seeking out blood and torture for pleasure needs. If that's not scary, I don't know what is. So now that we have looked at how Elizabeth Bathory's accomplishments have affected our world today, let's look at what makes this woman qualified for the Worst Villain Award. The Worst Villain Award was established as an award to acknowledge, obviously, the worst people of all time. This award was originally designed by my great-grandfather, Edward Lance, in 1915 and is awarded once every 100 years. Because the award is fairly new, and we couldn't find anyone within the last 100 years that we could see was as deserving as Elizabeth Bathory, we decided to take a step back in time and grant Elizabeth Bathory this award. So now that we have seen the monumental life and impact of Elizabeth Bathory, let's conclude. So first, I made note of her accomplishments. Then, I documented how her accomplishments have affected people today. And finally, I put the Worst Villain Award into perspective to prove once and for all that Elizabeth Bathory deserves this ridiculous award. So on behalf of every child, teenager, and disturbed person who has been affected by Elizabeth Bathory's life, I just want to say one thing. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. So please, help me welcome to the stage with whatever name you want to give her: infamous woman, vampire lady, bloodsucker, murderer, but what she's more formally known as, Elizabeth Bathory.